Anytime I talk about the problems with the BMI, the most common response I always get is, okay, well, what should we use instead? And the answer is nothing. Get rid of it and replace it with nothing.
Yes. Because any reminder that your obesity is your own fault is bad and must be abolished.
We literally don't need it. If a patient needs to be assessed for an illness, doctors use diagnostic testing to do that. If a patient has an illness, the doctor will treat that illness. If medications need to be dosed based on weight, there are formulas that already exist to calculate those dosages.
It's funny that you're saying this, Miss Anna, to make a point, yet you will use these same points to explain why doctors shouldn't weigh you because they don't need to know your weight or them weighing you is fatphobic. This information, which is coming from her, in itself shows how she and many others in fat acceptance and fat liberation are purposefully misleading and cherry-pick what information they want to push forward as long as it fits in their narrative and agendas.
If a doctor wants to educate a patient about the benefits of health-promoting behaviors, they can and should do that with all their patients.
Until it comes to your weight, then doctors shouldn't educate you, the patient, on health-promoting habits, right?
There is no medical scenario where the BMI or any tool like the BMI is the most effective, most specialized tool for the job.
Wrong. There is a tool that is better than the BMI, and it is called the waist-to-height ratio. The waist-to-height ratio is more accurate than the BMI at predicting or identifying obesity. From Dr. Michelle Swenson, who led the research on the weight-to-height ratio, carrying fat around the abdominal area has been shown to be an independent predictor of all-cause mortality in men and women. Put simply, it is more important, especially for cardiometabolic conditions, that your belt notch goes down than the reading on the scale. The ratio is calculated by measuring the waist circumference and height, then you divide the waist circumference by the height. Cut points for predicting whole body obesity are 0.53 in men and 0.49 in women. The cut point for predicting abnormal obesity is 0.59 in both sexes. Healthy numbers are therefore between 0.42 and 0.49 for women, 0.43 to 0.52 for men, and 0.46 to 0.51 for children.
We already have systems and tools in place to meet whatever a patient's specific health needs may be.
Correct, and I just mentioned one.
Categorizing and pathologizing patients based on weight is and has always been lazy medicine.
I found the use of the word lazy ironic given that she and activists of fat acceptance, fat liberation, and similar movements became activists of those movements in the first place because of their own laziness to do what it takes to reduce at least the visceral fat that is killing them faster than if they didn't have it. Try your hands at the waist to height ratio. It doesn't use your weight at all, and who tell you that in your current state you're at a higher risk of developing cardiovascular diseases and other diseases that obesity puts you at higher risk of? Why? Because of the large amount of fat that you carry around your vital organs.
Story time. I have had severe chronic back pain my whole life, ever since I was like 5 years old.
If by 5 years old you were already obese, then your obesity could have very much resulted in you developing back pain, which only will get worse and create more problems if left untreated. This peer-reviewed article by Marco Funicello explains the correlation between excess weight and back pain. The article starts with all that you need to know, and I quote, "Every extra pound of weight adds strain to the muscles and ligaments of the back. To compensate for extra weight, the spine tends to become tilted and stressed unevenly. Excess stomach weight typically pulls the pelvis forward, increasing lumbar lordosis, leading to aggravated lower back pain." The same article also says, Excess weight also tends to prolong the recovery period after episodes of back pain. So the culprit here is more likely her high weight from a very tender age, which only got worse as she grew up because she's refused to lose some weight to help herself.
And I have done literally everything imaginable to try to make it better with little to no success.
You haven't tried weight loss.
My pain got progressively worse over time.
Because you let it be instead of working toward weight loss to help your own body.
And about 4 years ago, when it became particularly severe, I decided it was finally time to consider surgery.
So at this point, we already have an admission that she let her back pain worsen on purpose. She wasn't 5 years old yesterday or 4 years ago, and by the time she reached 5, she was more likely obese already. And if not, becoming obese made that back pain worse over the years.
So I made an appointment with an orthopedic surgeon. They weighed me, they x-rayed my back, and then they had me wait for the doctor. The doctor came in and very quickly let me know that I needed to have a spinal fusion surgery and I needed to have one as quickly as possible. He showed me the x-rays and explained that I not only had a spinal deformity, which I already knew, but that the friction between two of my vertebrae had caused a fracture. So I had a broken back.
Notice the framing of this story because it is very important.
And I was like, got it. When can we schedule surgery? But he responded and said, well, the problem is your weight. Unfortunately, we're going to need you to lose some weight before we would be willing to do surgery on you. But luckily, we have an in-house weight loss program that we're going to refer you to.
Deal breaker, you fatphobic doctors.
And there are many things I could have said in response to this, but I decided to try to appeal to this doctor as someone who, in theory, should want to do no harm.
Did you catch that? The framing here is doctors are supposed to do no harm, yet they're harming me because they're asking me to lose some weight before I can safely receive treatment for an ailment that I contributed in.
So I told him, I have a history of disordered eating.
No kidding.
And weight loss behaviors are very unsafe for me.
When dealing with disordered eating, weight loss is only unsafe if you do it with no safe, proper guidance. And that guidance doesn't develop from thin air. You go to a physician who assesses you and refers you to a specialist if needed. And from there, you're provided with the assistance you need with your disordered eating and weight management. When you need to lose some weight for your own health, your physician and or dietitian helping you toward recovery won't tell you that weight loss is unsafe for you. So this alone is an indication that you're just using your disordered eating as an excuse not to lose some weight and may not be receiving help for it either. I have disordered eating too, developed from the time I was left unfed while still being a child, but I'm neither obese nor emaciated. I manipulate my weight according to my goals in a safe way because I received the proper guidance to do so when I needed that help. Also, keep in mind that disordered eating is not eating disorder. The latter is classified as mental disorder.
And by the look on his face, he clearly did not believe that I ever had an eating disorder.
Well, I wouldn't believe you either. Anyone dealing with disordered eating and or eating disorder knows the difference between the two and would not use the term interchangeably. Tesolide does that. Fatsafik Bro does that. Hannah here is doing it too. And they're not the only ones in these movements. And these are giveaways that they're lying to push their own agendas. Last but not least, disordered eating is not a diagnosis in itself, but a term used to describe behavior patterns seen in people who don't fit within the specific criteria for any of the eating disorders that are listed in the DSM-5. So you can fit within the DSM-5 and not fit within the DSM-5 at the same time. That's one reason why we don't use disordered eating and eating disorders interchangeably. And while one with disordered eating could later on develop eating disorders, This does not always happen. I am a proof of this.
He said the reason was because anesthesia was too dangerous for people in my BMI category.
This article published in April 2022 is titled A Review of the Anesthetic Management of Obese Patients Under Surgery. Mentions at least the risk of surgery on obese individuals. The higher your weight and the higher your risk for obstructive apnea and other several respiratory problems, as well as higher risk of heart attacks and other cardiovascular events during surgery. That's why patients are recommended to lose as much weight as they possibly can before surgical procedures. This is to keep the patient as safe as possible before, during, and after the procedure.
And I said, so how do people even bigger than me get weight loss surgery every single day?
First of all, weight loss surgery is not as common as she makes it sound, and not all obese patients qualify for it. Just because many morbidly obese individuals receive weight loss surgery doesn't mean that they're not at higher risk of dying on the table.
We went back and forth for a long time, and he ended up getting very frustrated and just said, look, I don't know what to tell you. This is the hospital's policy.
In short, she's saying that the surgeon told her their hands were bound. Listen, I truly want to help you, but the hospital's policy won't let me, right?
So I had to battle this hospital with this horrible BMI cutoff policy for a whole year, all while having a broken back that entire time before I could finally get the surgery they had established was medically necessary.
Remember when I told you, Bestie, to watch her framing? She stepped into her own way of getting treatment and therefore aggravating her ailment even further because things had to go not as her surgeon recommended for her own health, but as she wanted.
And by the point that I was finally able to get this surgery, they had made me wait so long that over the course of that year, I had developed permanent nerve damage, which is extremely painful to this day and has radically changed how I have to live my life.
Are you seeing it yet? She got obese and developed lower back pain. Losing weight would help alleviate the pain and possibly even cure it, but she refused to go that way. Instead, she put on more weight, worsening her back pain over the years, and when she finally could receive treatment, all she had to do was lose some weight for her own safety during the treatment, but she refused and continued to worsen her back pain to the point of no return, and now she blames the surgeon and the hospital for something that she did to herself.
And that would not have happened if they had just given me the surgery on the same timeline as a thin patient.
The mental gymnastic is too strong here. Well, Miss Anna, you would probably not have needed surgery in the first place if you had taken better care of yourself and your health. And blaming others for your shortcomings says more about you and nothing about whoever you're blaming. Also, I strongly feel like this entire story was crafted for clout. While I can't tell whether it is true, I will bet it was embellished a tad to match to push the message that physicians are fatphobic and thin people are privileged. Neither is true.
As a therapist, I do a lot of work with clients on improving their relationships with their bodies, and I do this work with clients of all sizes.
After the previous two videos, it's a scary thought that she's a therapist and works with others. A therapist's job is to help you recognize your flaws, accept them, and move past them. Not cuddle your feelings and telling you that you're flawless and it is the world and everybody else in it that are messed up.
But the way that I do that work with clients of different sizes looks very different, but probably not in the way that you're thinking.
Well, every individual is different and has different needs, and the way you work with person A will most likely not be the same way as with person B, C, and so on.
For thin folks, our work almost exclusively focuses on repairing the internal experience.
Do obese individuals not have internal experiences, whatever that means?
There may be some light work on setting boundaries with friends and family about diet and body talk.
Obese individuals need boundaries with family, friends, diets, and their bodies too.
But overwhelmingly, the work is about allowing the individual to be free from the fat phobia they may have learned from external sources,
What now?
but that they themselves enforce.
Hold on a minute. What type of therapist is this?
On the flip side, when I work with other fat people, we still do the internal work.
As you should.
We address the internal, the interpersonal, and the systemic experience.
You know, when a language is not your primary one, you may encounter translation losses. That's the case right now. So I'm not exactly sure what she's talking about, and I'm not trying to be funny. And if you can enlighten me, please leave it in the comments section.
Internalized fat phobia has taught us to police our own bodies, but we are also existing in a world full of people and institutions that purposefully and explicitly police our bodies in ways that thin folks don't experience.
Here we go with the victim mentality and allusion to thin privilege. She said quite a lot in those few seconds, and she's right on one point. Society has taught us to police our bodies and sometimes other people's bodies. While that's true, it's also true that fat acceptance and fat liberation, along with similar movements, use the same argument to police other people's bodies, as they themselves point the finger at those who do in the same exact breath. Yes, society has pushed the message that thinner bodies are more attractive for years, but it wasn't always like that if you look at beauty standards through the years. But the conversation is not on what is considered beautiful. As a matter of fact, beauty is subjective, and we are all ugly to someone, with no exception. When it comes to body size, the emphasis is on health, not beauty. The more fat you carry in your body and the less healthy you are. The same is true for those who carry too less to barely any fat.
It's not just the individual or the occasional insensitive person enforcing these limitations. We have to navigate a vast sea of people and systems that put concrete barriers in our way.
What barriers would that be? Because it is manipulative to remain as fake as you can possibly be when you're making your point. You intentionally hiding some information and construct phrases with buzzwords in the effort to distract your audience from what you're hiding, and therefore radicalizing that audience. That's how extremists and radical extremists operate.
For example, when preparing for a medical appointment, a thin person may be concerned about being weighed at the doctor's office because seeing the number on the scale might trigger feelings of comparison or worthlessness.
What? You clearly have never been thin, so I reluctantly gave you a pass for this idiotic statement, Miss Anna.
A fat person might also be concerned about the emotions that the number on the scale could elicit for them, but we are also concerned about how the number on the scale may trigger bad or reduced care from our medical providers.
That's one of the most ridiculous things I've heard someone say. Yes, there are assholes who are physicians. Assholes are everywhere. But not all physicians or healthcare providers are assholes. Your weight and medical history are important for medical professionals to assist you better. And if you don't like the number on the scale, ask yourself why and seek professional help, as that could be an indication of something more serious. And if you are obese and don't like to see or know how much you weigh, that's a problem that you need not to ignore either. Do something about it instead of trying to convert others into reaching the same weight and more just so you will feel better about yourself.
Because it could very well result in criticism, contempt, diversion, or flatly being denied medical care at all.
A physician weighing you and recommending you lose some weight is not denying you medical care. You refusing to follow your physician's recommendation is you denying medical care to yourself.
So for fat folks, I am not just teaching clients how to self-soothe and remain focused when they feel stressed.
She speaks as if thin people don't feel stressed.
I am also teaching them how to advocate for themselves in these various situations so that they can access the same resources thin folks get without question.
Is she serious? Resources are available, but obese and morbidly obese individuals who follow these crappy movements turn down those resources when they don't go their way.
We talk about travel, shopping, job hunting, salary negotiations, school, recreation, dating, healthcare, and more, because size discrimination shows up in big ways in all of these areas.
Okay, let's take each area. Travel. There are safety measures in place and they involve weight requirement. There are reasons why your checked luggage have weight requirement. For instance, safety. There is a reason why seats in planes, trains, vehicles, etc. are designed the way they are. For airplanes, for instance, there's safety, but there's also profit. The current standards in place already accommodate larger individuals. If you're larger than that, that's a choice you're making, and that choice comes with consequences, which include paying more or traveling by other means. Shopping. Like for air travel, the larger you are and the more you have to pay, because making clothing and shoes your size demand more fabric and more material, none of which is free. Extra is not free, and if you want extra, you have to pay for it. It's common sense. Job hunting. Well, Miss Anna, the job that I currently hold took me 12 years to get, and I'm not obese. When it comes to jobs, there are requirements that you have to fulfill. If you don't fit those requirements, then guess what? You won't be selected. Also, use your common sense. If the job requires you to be on your feet for most of the shift, lifting and moving some weight around, if you're not physically fit, then that's you not qualifying. If it is a desk job, you still need to fulfill other requirements. You either qualify or you don't, or someone else is more qualified than you are and you don't get selected. Some jobs are just not for obese individuals unless they demonstrate they have the fitness required for them. And in my mind, I have the military, firefighters, pilot. Holy smoke, if you can fit in a single seat plane, you might not be able to even enter the cockpit in many planes to begin with. Another thing is safety as well, and company would do their best to avoid suits against them. So they won't hire someone for a position that purposely is going to put the employee at unnecessary risk, knowing that when tragedy happens, that employee or their family will sue them. So, taking the pilot job again, if you want to be one, then you must not be obese, among other requirements that you will also need to fulfill. Salary negotiations. Your position and experience determine the salary you receive, not your body size. If you're a server in a restaurant, you can't expect to be paid the same as the renowned chef in the kitchen and who's behind each dish that you serve. As the secretary in the firm you work at, you can't expect to be paid what the engineer in that same firm is paid. A level 1 engineer in a company cannot expect to be paid what the level 5 engineer is paid, and so on. But do you know who's discriminated against when it comes to salary? Illegal workers. School and recreations. How are obese individuals discriminated against here? About recreations, if you're talking about not being allowed on some attractions because of your body size, then that has to do with safety and avoidance of unnecessary suits against the park should anything preventable happen to you on their premises. Dating. People have preferences, and not wanting to date obese individuals is as valid as not wanting to date someone from the same sex or trans individuals, for instance. It's not your job to make others like or want you, but it is yours to make yourself happy however you can achieve that.
So, if you're a therapist who serves fat clients and the only work that you're doing with them is about changing their mindset and healing their emotions, but you're not giving them any practical tools to navigate the discrimination they will experience in the real world, then they are being wildly underserved by you.
Well, Miss Anna, I'm deeply sorry for the people who work with you. By the sound of the way you work with them, it seems you're shaping them into what you want them to be, to satisfy your own ego rather than what they need for their own healing. That's not being a therapist, but rather a cult leader. Thanks for watching, Beasties. Train mean.